Inflation is under control, they say, because a whole bunch of the prairie provinces have stepped in and repealed the carbon tax on home heating. And because they've done this, inflation has dropped Canada-wide because their averages are down. And so it is incredible because the premiers, Wab Kinew, Scott Moe, they're celebrating, but also they're pointing out like, hey, look at this. This is very interesting. Do you think that the carbon tax is inflationary? Oh, yes. Yes, it is. So that's interesting as well. And Boris Johnson wants $1 million from Tucker Carlson in order for Tucker Carlson to interview him about what he thinks about the Ukrainian war. I thought that was interesting. There's a lot. There's almost 60 tabs today, a lot to get to. We've got to get started. Let's get going. First, we have to start with Arrive Scam. And I didn't even tease Arrive Scam, but Arrive Scam's a big deal. As usual, the last couple of days, this is a 9-minute presser with Michael Barrett and Andrew Scheer. And Andrew Scheer says Trudeau's top Arrive Scam consultants at GC Strategies are hiding from Canadians. They don't want to answer questions about how the app costs ballooned to $60 million when it should have cost $80,000. It shouldn't have cost anything. Like, we're not having the conversation of why were you trying to track and trace your citizens, you jerks. Conservatives are fighting to uncover the truth. Yeah, maybe. A little bit, maybe. Here's Michael Barrett.
Andrew Scheer, as the Government Operations Committee is set to meet this afternoon, where Common Sense Conservatives will put forward a motion summoning the principals of GC Strategies to appear before the Government Operations Committee. Now, GC Strategies, of course, is the two-person firm who worked on Justin Trudeau's $60 million Arrive Scam scandal, but this app had this $20 million contract where this company did no actual IT work, and they have now twice refused to appear, having been summoned by committee. And the effect of today's motion will be to use the full power of the House of Commons to have these individuals appear before committee. It's incredibly important when we have this report from the
So they're trying to compel these people to show up when they don't want to show up. And they're trying to compel them with the full power of the House of Commons, which implies arrest. If you don't show up, we're going to arrest you. And so they said this afternoon, we're going to meet and we're going to use the full power and we're going to do this. And, let's go rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. And during that meeting, the Liberals scuttled it because they have majority power. And Michael Barrett says, shameful Liberals block a vote on the Arrive Scam investigation. Majority of MPs agree on summoning Arrive Cam contractors, GC Strategies, while Liberal MPs bluff about working with committee and blocks the vote. So here's a little exchange. It's quick.
Been working together.
Point of order, Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Kuzmirchuk, one moment, please. Yes, Mr. Barrett.
Just wondering if you could poll the room, because it looks like all members of the opposition are ready to work together and collaborate and pass the sub-amendment, the amendment, and the main motion, and move this ahead. Just the member was talking about collaboration. It looks like a majority of members of committee are ready to, and it looks like the Liberals are blocking this motion from passing.
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. I see your point, but it is not a point of order. Mr. Kuzmirchuk, if you're...
Back to the business of covering things up. Please continue. Holly Doan is reporting Liberal MPs block committee subpoenas, forcing ArriveCan contractors to testify under threat of arrest. Quote, this is putting us all in a rather precarious position. So the point of this, the Conservatives knew it was a pincer move. In chess, you can move a piece and put two pieces in challenge. And they have to move only one. They only have one move, right? Unless you can take out that pincering piece, then they lose either way, right? And they can't take out the pincering piece because the pincering piece right now is the House of Commons, this committee requesting these documents. Either they give over the documents or they block the committee. Either way, or block the movement, right? Either way, they look bad. The blocking the movement looks less bad, but it makes them look guilty as all get out, right? Guilty as heck. So it's very, very interesting how they're doing this. The Conservative Party is actually playing chess, and the Liberals are having temper tantrums and blaming Stephen Harper. But they're blocking these votes. So is this a Conservative win? Well, I mean, medium. They're in campaign mode, and they're trying to make Trudeau look as bad as possible. So they're making it so. They're creating situations where Trudeau has to put on the record that he's going to block investigations, that he's going to protect his crony insiders with this $20 million, $60 million, however much money they've gotten from however many contracts they've got. Who knows at this point in time, right? So making him wear it, making him be accountable to it is the best that they can do, because this gives them ammunition for videos, for advertisements, basically. And then the videos and advertisements say, join, click this thing here and join us. And then they can make money off of that to continue the fight. So say, I don't have a problem with people making money off of politics, off of doing this kind of stuff. I don't have a problem if people want to sign the petition. I don't think petitions do anything, but I don't really have a problem if you want to sign it. That's fine. I don't have a problem with, I don't have a problem with political parties using it as a vehicle. One political party started using it as a vehicle a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And then it didn't take off right away. And then it took off like wildfire after Trump, I think 2016. And now everybody is like, sign this petition. And signing the petition gives them your email. And then they can email you with like, hey, help us fight about this thing that you care about. It gives them a lot of information about you. So everybody's really interested in getting you to sign their petitions. So I find that a little bit suspect, because it's a little bit two-faced, right? It's a little bit disingenuous. It's fooling you into thinking we're going to fight for you. But at the same time, that's how our politics works. So I'm not trying to necessarily denigrate people from trying to utilize this to support their political party. I get it. I just wish people understood what they were looking at a little bit better. Okay. Get down off my soapbox. Who am I kidding? This whole thing's my soapbox. True North says Prime Minister Trudeau is asked whether he is willing to accept responsibility for the ArriveCan app scandal. I mean, that's he doesn't accept responsibility for anything, for anything. Like when he gets down for breakfast and whatever servant has created his breakfast and he slams it on the counter and says, I didn't want this. He doesn't even take responsibility for requesting that or not telling the person what he wanted. He doesn't take responsibility for anything at all. And so why would he take responsibility for ArriveCan scan? ArriveScan. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I don't think he's going to. Here we go.
So how did the government go so wrong with the ArriveCan app contracting and development, and do you take responsibility for those failures?
There continue to be ongoing investigations, both external and otherwise, into the contracting process. It is obvious that the contracting process rules were not followed in this case, and we need to make sure that there is accountability and transparency around that. But let us remember that during the pandemic, we were reaching out to try and keep people safe, keep people alive, make sure that our economy didn't falter at a time where everything was in question. Even in those most difficult times, we need to make sure the rules were followed.
Do you take responsibility for the ArriveCan app scandal? We did everything we could to keep people alive. Huh. I mean, is that an answer to that question? Obviously, the rules weren't followed in this case. Is that an answer to, will you take responsibility for the rules not being followed? Giving a 30,000-foot view of what happened. What happened was these people didn't follow the rules. And also, we did the best we could with the information we had. Next question. Sounds guilty as heck, right? As HE double hockey sticks. So that's Trudeau. That's a pivot. Answer the question you wanted to be asked, not the question you were asked, right? And politicians take a long time to learn that. But Justin Trudeau, man, he got it on the first day. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Garnet Genius is asking about Arrive scam documents. And he says, was there any documents destroyed? And the person says no. And he says, there's a huge lack of documents. It stands to reason that these documents would be there. Where are they if they weren't destroyed? And she plays dumb. And I'll show you a bit of that. Here we go.
There's a remarkable absence of documents.
Oh, man. Too fast. Too fast. Every time. Every day. Here is Garnet Genius again. And it's going to be too quiet. Hold on. Let's get this right. All right. It's queued up. Here we go.
There's a remarkable absence of documents, including records of basic communications that you would expect in a case like this. Did you or anyone else at the Public Health Agency of Canada destroy documents related to ArriveCan?
I have no knowledge or evidence of documents having been destroyed, and we have a policy that requires information of business value to be retained.
So you can't say that they were, and you can't say that they weren't, in terms of your own knowledge of documents being destroyed. Is that correct?
I can say we found no evidence of documents have been destroyed.
Okay, but there was such a glaring absence of documentation. Are you concerned that documents may have been destroyed? Do you think it's plausible that absolutely no records were kept in so many of these cases?
What I can say was it was a time of great change at the agency as we responded to the pandemic.
No, but people
and
still have to
hired
talk to
thousands
each
of
other,
staff.
right? I know, ma'am, I know.
Listen, we did the best we could with the information we had at the time. We saved lives. His point here is such nonsense, right? Somebody's told she's not as good at answering the question she wanted to answer instead of the question she was asked. She's not as good at that, right? She's pivoting very, very clumsy, like Doug Ford having a dance. He can't do the Liberal tap dance. He's very clumsy at it as well. Garnet Genius here makes a good point. Even in times of crisis, you'd think there'd be emails.
It was an urgent situation and lots was changing. But people still have to talk to each other. People still send emails back and forth. In times of urgency, I would expect there would still be a lot of communication happening. And yet there's such an absence of information. Are you concerned about the destruction of documents, especially with reports?
She doubles down. Obviously, right? No, not very concerned. Next question. Okay, let's talk about inflation. The carbon tax. Is the carbon tax inflationary? Short answer, yes. Yes, it is. And Wab Kinew is very, very excited about this. He's super excited. He says, Little Manitoba is doing big things. Wab Kinew says, because we cut our provincial fuel tax, inflation in Manitoba is now below 1%. Wow. Our fuel tax cut also brought down inflation across Canada. Little Manitoba is doing big things. Huh. That's weird. I think I was told that it's not inflationary. It'll be revenue neutral, and it'll flow through the gas tank like a warm summer breeze. You know, you won't even feel it. That's a Kids in the Hall reference. Very obscure. Here's Wab Kinew.
Good news. We lowered inflation in Manitoba, and it's all because we cut the provincial gas tax. According to Statistics Canada, because of that move that we made on your behalf to help your family, inflation in our province is now below 1%. Now here's the thing. I recognize that this work is not done. You're still feeling the impact of interest rates, grocery prices. So definitely we're going to have to take more steps. But I just wanted to provide this update because you know what? Our cut to the provincial fuel tax actually helped to reduce inflation across Canada. So look at Little Manitoba doing big things, but of course, more work to do on your behalf.
How come Ontario is still paying carbon taxes on home heating? Doug Ford, what's up with that, man? Here's Gary, and he says, this is what Trudeau's carbon tax is doing to Canada's inflation rate. Congrats, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, for eliminating this tax on everything to make life more affordable for Saskatchewan residents. So Manitoba's premier likes them, kind of, I guess. Scott Moe likes them, right, in Saskatchewan. Brad Wall is also saying this is quite something from StatsCan. This is StatsCan's report. The Federal Bureau of Statistics is confirming that Saskatchewan's removal of the carbon tax from home heating helped reduce our inflation rate well below the national average, but the carbon tax isn't inflationary, right? And so that's pretty interesting. Here's Scott Moe, and he's talking about this. Saskatchewan's decision to remove the Trudeau carbon tax on home heating dropped Saskatchewan's inflation rate in January to 1.9%, down from 2.7% in December and well below the national rate of 2.9%. According to StatsCan, in Saskatchewan, the collection of carbon taxes ceased in January 24, contributing to the province's year-over-year price decline of natural gas, minus 26.6%. The Trudeau carbon tax was over a quarter of the cost of natural gas in Saskatchewan. If the feds are actually serious about fighting inflation, they would scrap the carbon tax on everyone and everything. Conclusions would be that they're not trying to fight inflation. They're not, right? CBC News says Canada's annual inflation fell to 2.9% in January, according to data from StatsCan. So the reason that it fell is because Alberta, a whole bunch of provinces in the east, had their heating removed from the carbon tax, and then Manitoba and Saskatchewan followed suit. And that's why the inflation rate fell. Without that, the inflation is still high. Do you understand? And so what is happening here? It's unbelievable what's happening here. Keith is responding to what's happening here. What's happening here is sabotage. What's happening here is we are shooting ourselves in the foot repeatedly and saying, oh no, I wish Vladimir Putin would stop. shooting me in the foot. Like, and then you're trying to convince your family that Vladimir Putin's there shooting you in the foot and you've got to go next door and get him, right? Like, go get that guy. I'm pretty sure Vlad's not in the room, Dad. But I keep shooting my foot. I mean, he keeps shooting my foot. Keith is responding to all of this because it's sabotage, because what's happening is not an accident, it's on purpose. And he says, higher cost of living, more inflation, high interest rates for longer, housing shortage getting worse, families losing homes, younger people can't afford the rent increases, huge multi-generational debt liability being created before our eyes, more and more tax increases of all kinds coming. People don't understand this. People really don't. It's like watching in 2020 when they were talking about the supply chain and all of the rest of it and not understanding how long it would take to actually hit, because people were going to the grocery store and saying, well, everything costs the same. But a year later, 2 years later, right? People don't understand what's coming, because what's coming is going to be tax increases. It's going to be problems, unless this is, well, we're a rich country. And as I said yesterday, we could fix this problem. We could fix this problem by exporting our goods, selling our goods on the world stage, creating jobs and so on and so forth, building pipelines, et cetera, et cetera. But you'd have to have people who are sane, right? Regardless, he continues, I never thought it would come to this, but today I recommended to my adult children that they move out of Canada for a better future. I can't say that I'm not also considering it. And I think that anybody with the opportunity and the option is looking at it thinking, yeah, it might be worthwhile. Contrary, and we're going to go through this in just a minute. The tweet that Keith is responding to is this one. Canada is Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, Rhodes Scholar, reporter, finance minister, her acting like a communist dictator when it comes to taxpayers' money. One, she just increased the government borrowing limit by $73 billion, and she granted herself authority to do so. Oh, by the way, yesterday I said it was for next year. Apparently, it's not. It's for this year. It was supposed to be, he's going to go through it here, but the increase that I thought was taking effect for next year's budget happening this year, before next year's budget comes into play. So we're actually $73 billion over, which is not good. Back to this. Shockingly, this is just money that can be borrowed up until April 1st of this year. No reasons given. So that's a lot more than the $2 billion for the company that didn't exist. 3, when questioned by opposition, she refuses to say what the extra $73 billion is needed for. Ukraine? 4, the previous amount allowed was $444 billion. Now it's $573 billion. Again, no explanations given. She raised the federal debt ceiling 56% from $1.168 trillion to $1.831 trillion with zero accountability. Freeland has not specified any plans to balance the federal budget. The budget was last balanced in 2007. Budget officers' own comments, we don't know exactly where the government plans on spending or doing in terms of new spending or potential spending, replied Budget Officer Giroux. What happens when an actual Nazi descendant who is a journalist is put in charge of destroying Canadians without a single gas chamber? Lastly, why does that hallway look so narrow? And there is Chrystia Freeland. And I believe this is a new picture. Actually, it's not a new picture. She's got a poppy on, but it's in a red dress. Her favorite red dress. Here's Holly Doan. She says as many as a fifth of Canadians face energy poverty due to high costs, says Canadian Journal of Public Health. Scary, right? Scary. And how could you solve that problem? What could you possibly do? Well, there's nothing the government could do. Nothing at all. Robert Malone is responding to the red-headed libertarian. She says it took Libertarian President Javier Milei 9.5 weeks to balance the budget and create a surplus. 9.5 weeks. So yeah, Argentina sees first monthly budget surplus in 12 years. Yowza. So if you have somebody who actually cares about, money and things, and who understands what's going on and who says, this is probably wasteful, this is probably wasteful, this is probably wasteful, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it, and focuses on running a country efficiently and for the people, you could make a huge change in a short period of time. You could turn a lot of people, Barack Obama famously, but a lot of people use the metaphor of a cruise ship for government. It's very difficult to turn, takes a long time. Sure, you can turn it, but you're not a powerboat. A powerboat can zip around a cruise ship and the cruise ship wouldn't be able to respond because it's just not as maneuverable, right? And I think that you could have a government that's as maneuverable as a powerboat, a speedboat, like a little, I was going to, like a little speedboat, rather than a big cruise ship. And that's demonstrated there, I think. personally. And I think that you could do it. Like you can empower, you can create guidelines, frameworks to have municipalities operate within the frameworks rather than have carte blanche to be taken over by radicals who want to implement gender ideology or racism or anything like that. You could have frameworks and then like total freedom within the frameworks, right? But maybe the framework is just another word for some kind of tyrannical system, blah, 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 blah. I just want to protect people from radicals who take over public whatever, public institutions, publicly funded, municipalities, school boards, all of that kind of stuff, and use it to their own ends. I just want to have those institutions protected and insulated against radicals who attack from the inside, who get inside and attack from an authoritative stance, because they're not authoritative. They're insane. They're round the bed insane. And I would like some way to deal with them. And I think that we should have that protection for the children, for the families, for the parents, because it helps everybody. And I just don't know how to implement it properly. So, because freedom is important as well, right? So Jack Straw is referring to this financial news. Iraq's central bank sells over $1 billion in US dollars in 1 week. Iraqi news. So they're de-dollarizing. And so I'm sure they're joining BRICS. And in Turkey, they're releasing their first phase digital lira. And it's an evaluation report. So there you go. So Turkey's got a digital lira and they're checking it out, and people are, I'm sure, like I've talked about this before, people moved from checkbooks and cash to debit seamlessly. My mom loved it. She loved it. She hated checkbooks and she hated balancing checkbooks. Goodness gracious me. So can you imagine like an auto balancing app on your phone that people could just go shopping with, and it works everywhere and blah, blah, blah. People will love it. Absolutely love it. I hope I'm wrong. I've seen videos of people saying, oh, I'm in Silicon Valley and I'm going to pay with my palm, right? And they use their palm print or like a chip that's implanted underneath their skin or something like that. Crazy town. Like, do you people want to be imprisoned for the rest of your lives to your palm print? I don't understand. I don't understand the draw. I get that it's maybe convenient, but you're going to have to do a lot better than convenient, right? Like you're going to have to mandate it. And even then I'll probably spit in your eye. Robert Fife, let's talk about war. Robert Fife says, NATO Secretary General, so this is like a big deal, says Canada must inform NATO alliance, when it will raise defense spending. So we've got this bill here and it's been in arrest for a while. You haven't paid in a while. And Canada, we've got to have a meeting, right? You ever have an email right at the end of the day, like you're getting ready to go, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, do you have a second before you leave? Like come down to the office before you go. You ever get those emails, right? I got one of those emails once. I didn't get fired, but I got told in no uncertain terms a couple of things. I was late. I used to be late a lot. And so I got told, if you're late again, and I was like, seriously? I do the dishes. Are you kidding? Rex Glacier. I did say that, and she laughed and said, I know. And I did the dishes before most anybody else got there. They wanted me there at 7:30, and I would usually get there at like 7:40, and they were like, that 10 minutes is a real big problem. And I was like, can you pick your battles? This doesn't seem like one worth fighting. She said, well, it's going to creep. And I was like, it's not going to creep. That's kind of just what I get here. I think I won that one. I don't think I ever changed. I think like the next day I showed up at 7:30, and the day after that it was 7:38. And I was like, anyway, regardless. Rex Glacier, war. Let's get back to the NATO thing. You know something's wrong when the NATO superintendent is like, listen, we've got to have a meeting. 3:00, you're getting ready to go. Justin Trudeau, okay, it's 2:00. He's getting ready to go. And he gets that email, right? He's like, uh-oh, I'm probably in trouble. He's not going to change. He's not going to change. Darn it. I mean, I don't think any government in Canada has made honest attempts to fund NATO at the 2% mark, ever. Rex Glacier says, no more blaming just Trump for calling out Canada. NATO wants to know. US, Australia, and UK want to know why Canada plans on getting serious. So never, this guy's in charge, right? Here's somebody asking about that. Here we go.
In an interview today with CTV News, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, he said that he expects the alliance members, including and specifically Canada, to spend 2% of GDP on defense. But if they're not at that level this year, they should have a date or when they will hit 2%. Your government has never articulated a date, yes or no, to when they will say when Canada will hit that 2%.
When we took office in 2015, we took over from a conservative government that had underinvested in defense. under Stephen Harper and his Conservative.
It's Harper's fault we don't. It's Harper's fault that Justin Trudeau has not given a date to the UN Secretary General. Obviously, I can't believe we didn't know that before. He should have. The reporter should have known and already written the article. It's Stephen Harper's fault. Carry on.
It is. Defense spending in Canada actually dipped below 1% for the first time. And that's unacceptable.
That's why, from the very beginning, we committed to increasing defense spending by 70%. Over time,
we increased. I mean, we committed to increasing, but we never did. So blah, 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 blah. I think the Mickey Mouse is a little bit funny. We'll just leave it there. However, Justin Trudeau, incapable of taking responsibility for anything at all. It's always Stephen Harper's fault. CBC News is reporting Canada has signaled it's prepared to get behind a Czech initiative to ship tens of thousands of artillery shells from different countries to Ukraine. Does this count for NATO spending? Can we just add that to, like, we'll pretend that's NATO spending, okay? Tens of thousands of shells from the Czech Republic? Huh. I mean, it seems aggressive to pay for weapons of war against other countries when we're not, paying our fair share for NATO and, all of that. It seems kind of silly. Here's Julian Assange reminding us that the point of all this is a forever war that washes tax dollars out of Western countries and into places like, Ukraine. Here it's Afghanistan, but Ukraine. Here we go.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
Right? And that's not great, right? And because that's very expensive. Here's Tasha, and she says, this is a National Post article. This is a quote from it. Our enemies know that if a country constantly denigrates its history, its citizens won't be proud of it. And if its people aren't proud, they won't sign up to fight for it. Well, they also won't sign up to fight for an army that hates them, right? Like an army that says, white supremacy is the biggest problem. Come and die for us, you whitey. The Donald Trump things. And they're pretty short. And then there's some Easter eggs at the end here. This is actually... This is the Kids in the Hall clip I was referencing earlier, where he's driving along in his car. And a lot of the Kids in the Hall clips are uncomfortably funny. And this one, my friend and I would quote it to each other a lot. And we'd say, man, life's a pretty sweet fruit. But the whole clip is how terrible life is. So we'll go through the Trump thing and then we'll watch the Kids in the Hall skit. Here's the first Trump skit. It's a minute long. President Trump explains how they rigged 2020. If you have mail-in ballots, you have a rigged election. Hey, didn't we have mail-in ballots in Canada that one time, the last election? That 200 ballots didn't get counted or something? I don't know. Forget about it. It's probably nothing. Here we go.
Speaking of that, how are you going to make sure that mail-in ballots and voter fraud, which we heard from a lot of people in line, was an issue front and center? They're very concerned about mail-in voting. So forget the past. What are you going to do to make sure we don't have problems going forward?
If you have mail-in voting, you automatically have fraud. If you have
there's mail-in voting in Florida,
That's
and you
right.
won huge.
That's right. If you have it, you're going to have fraud.
But you won.
Because you don't have any. When you go into a voting place, like you go into one in a properly run state, they look at you, you give voter ID, you give all sorts of identification. It would be very hard to cheat in a mass scale. When you send out millions, like California, I think they sent out 36 million ballots. They don't have a voting booth in the whole place. And then millions of ballots come back. Nobody knows where they're coming from.
Right, but what are you going to do about it?
The way you win is by swamping them. The way you win is by swamping them. You got to have, and we're going to swamp. I'll tell you what, I did great in the first election. I did much better in the second.
We have interesting news coming out of New
Oh, she's going to cut him off. There's more from this Ingram interview. This one's the last one's fast. Why don't you drop out? Here we go. Why don't you drop out? He says he wants to make America great again.
You ever just say to yourself, I'm done. This is what why? A lot of people would have said, I'm out. Why are you staying in this?
I can't, because I want to make America great again. It's not great right now. And we can do that. We can do it. Laura, we can do it. We can get it fixed. It's harder now. It would have been so much easier if we just finished off that. Everything would have been so perfect. We had the border set. Everything was set to rock and roll. We had no.
So you feel like you have an obligation to America
I do.
because it's coming.
Yeah. Yep. Here's Donald Trump says, I'm not interested in revenge. Here we go.
I don't care about the revenge thing. I know they usually use the word revenge. Will there be revenge? My revenge will be success.
I don't care about. That's a good goal, don't you think? I think so. So here's the one video is 2 hours long on chemtrails and HARP, and I think that's interesting. And that's something that, as I watch them spray the skies, I want to understand what's going on. And this is a clip from the 90s talking about ADL was caught red-handed, faking Nazi groups to justify things. Blah 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 blah. So there's a little bit of Easter eggs. Here's that part. Life's a pretty sweet fruit. Hey, hold on.
Life's a pretty sweet fruit. Don't you ever laugh at my car. So, what do you think I paid for? I'll tell you. $300. 30 easy payments. Couldn't even feel them. It was like a soft breeze blowing through my bank account. Who am I kidding? $36 a month almost killed me.
Life's a pretty sweet fruit. That's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.